Welcome back, everyone. Well, as promised, this is part two of my interview with Christopher Schmidt and Adam Pensel. They are, Adam is the chair for the Warren County Libertarian Party, and Christopher is a member and starting a chapter over in Washington County. We covered a lot of ground yesterday, kind of at that 30,000 foot level. Given the basic tenet that the Libertarians stand for, which is at least states' rights, individual rights, as opposed to the government running everything, I definitely wanted to continue the conversation and start to drill down at a state level. Recently, Governor Cuomo did a tour of the state in delivering different aspects of the state address. A lot of that affects our communities, especially Tri-North County communities, Saratoga, Warren, and Washington County. In listening and understanding what the governor is proposing, let's start with what you feel maybe some of the positive aspects are.
The positive aspects of what the governor is proposing.
Maybe I should have started that the other way.
What he's proposing is a spending bill, right? So yes, generally speaking, Libertarians are not big fans of spending bills on the government level. You know, we're fans of repealing spending, repealing taxation. So I can't pinpoint any specific thing in the entire bill that really we were overly in favor of. Yeah. One thing that he did do recently, though, that Cuomo did do recently in wake of the immigration thing that's been going on is directing the New York State resources to protecting some of the people that were immigrating in the airports if they were in New York State. So,
yeah, I thought that was kind of a bold move there, but one that was absolutely necessary, considering New York, Metro New York, is a gateway to the country from the East Coast, really, if you consider that. Well, then let's go to the other side, because I do know that spending is central to your thinking and the libertarian philosophy. What stands out to you about spending? Let's go to education.
Yeah, so in the recent bill that he's announced, they want to pass free higher education for New York State residents for families that make $125,000, I believe, or less per year.
That's right.
And what we've generally found is that we are against paying for education, paying for higher education. And it's not because we don't want individuals to have higher education. We think that that's a pertinent part of having a functioning society, is to have everyone well educated. But the problem with that is what we've found is that the further government gets involved with education, the higher the prices of tuition climb. And there was actually a study done by the New York Federal Reserve back in 2015, and they found a conclusive link between the increase in government grants and the rising costs of tuition because they outpaced the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, right? So we think that this is going in the wrong direction. The bill itself does nothing to reduce the actual cost of education. All it does is it shifts the burden of that cost onto the taxpayer rather than onto the individuals that it's on now. And we want to see legislation passed that actually fundamentally does something to reduce the overall costs.
Now, you know what? There's a lot of twists and turns in what you're saying. Some would argue that giving underprivileged students the opportunity to get an education without the burden of student loans and whatever would accomplish 90% of what you just said. But the other side of that, of course, is if that money goes into the institutions themselves, all of a sudden you find yourself with a brand new gymnasium on the backs of taxpayers, which the students are paying for, which they're going to have to pay back with their loans, just as an example.
Yeah, no, precisely. In fact, that's actually what's literally happening right now. If you look at the rising costs of tuition in this country, we don't see any increase in the quality of the education that these people are receiving at the higher education institutions. Instead, we're seeing these schools spend money on things like gymnasiums, on fast food restaurants, on things that are designed to appeal students to come to those schools and give them that grant money. So even though the government's paying for the education, indirectly, by giving that money to the students, there's no mandate on how these schools spend that money. For example, down in Louisiana, a public university invested $95 million into an athletic center that included a water park and a lazy river.
Gee, I would have majored in lazy river. I don't know. Yeah, you know what? There are always stories like that. You know, when you drill down here, though, you hear things like, well, it will go into building a STEM center, you know, so to further science and technology and engineering and math. Those kinds of things, you know. So I know that there's a give and take on this conversation, but it does seem to me that your point of view is well taken. that if the money really does go to reducing the burden on the individual student, then competition increases at the school level, right?
Right.
They want these students to come. And also, then the students really do go to try to get a practical education.
Yeah, I mean, there's no incentive for a college right now to reduce their tuition.
Right, okay.
Because the demand is infinite. There's government grants, there's government-backed student loans. So students that are graduating from high school are pretty much guaranteed to have the funding that they need to go to college, regardless of how much it's going to cost. So these schools don't have any incentives to lower their prices at all. And that's what the free market does when you go back to a free market system in education.
I think the other topic that we needed to discuss is taxation. New York having the highest tax rate of any state in the country. I think people are leaving the state faster than they're coming into the state. An easy one to talk about, right? But a hard one to execute.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. New York State is actually 45th in the nation in net migration. In fact, we have more people leaving the state than coming into the state. And that's obviously hurting our tax base, but it also has to do with the amount of business growth that we have in this state. The tax code works for Manhattan. It really doesn't work for the rest of the state, and neither the cities nor the small towns. I mean, all you have to do is drive down I-90, and the Rust Belt runs right across New York State with Syracuse, Binghamton, Utica, Rochester.
Just travel I-90.
Right, exactly, and you can see it all. So we want to see the tax burden reduced in this state, so more of the businesses from other areas are willing to invest here, create job growth, and in turn, get the state turned back in a positive direction.
Well, you know what I want to applaud both of you for, and I know you're starting to open up the chapter over there in Washington County, is that a democracy really works when you respect individual rights and you understand that if it starts at a grassroots level, that's really where the strength of the electorate lives, is at grassroots level. You had mentioned that you meet every third Wednesday in Glens Falls?
That's right, at Rock Hill Bakehouse Cafe at 6:30 p.m.
And you're going to start the Washington County chapter.
Yep.
Where are you going to meet?
Our first meeting is February 15th at Empire Pizza in Hudson Falls.
In Hudson Falls.
At 5:30.
And just so you know, anyone from Saratoga, Warren, and Washington County is allowed to participate in our chapter via our bylaws. So we encourage you to come.
And going right back to the basic tenets again of democracy, you want to run for office? Attend a meeting.
That's right. We're looking for candidates.
Them. Find out if your personal philosophy is in alignment with their personal philosophy, vice versa. Learn something. What a novel thing today in a popularity contest. But maybe you can actually learn something. How about that?
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you both very much for coming and spending the time. We had a lot to talk about between the two sessions. So.
Yeah.
And you're welcome back anytime. All right, Adam?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for coming in. To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.